The most exciting one I've had was a cold spot. I was telling you about it was like about maybe a 10-foot radius where the temperature went from 45 degrees to 14 degrees right in the middle of it.
Since the dawn of civilization, mankind has had a fascination with the unexplained. This boundless and peculiar curiosity is fueled by not only a vast history of mysterious and seemingly unexplainable events, but by our own incessant need to discover the limits of our own mortality. The question of life after death is as old as life itself. It's the very foundation of all the world's religions, and its answer, if ever discovered, would universally change the lives of every man, woman, and child, and forever alter the direction of scientific and religious pursuits. But how can such a question ever be answered? What means do we have to search for a world that is beyond our reach and years? And where should we begin? The answer may be right inside your very home. Mysterious voices, strange lights and apparitions, a feeling of foreboding, cold spots, slamming doors and moving objects are just some of the claims made by thousands of people each year, claims which are typically dismissed by local authorities and hardline skeptics as a hoax or the product of an overactive imagination. But these widespread claims of paranormal activity have been shared by not only the general population, but by some of the most prominent, trusted, and well-respected figures in our history. With over $500 million spent each year on paranormal-based horror films, it's difficult to dispute the effect this once forbidden subject has had on an increasingly curious population. In today's world, however, the public image of paranormal activity is usually tainted by the often unrealistic approach of the film and television industries.
My views on watching a lot of the movies, we know in Hollywood they have to do their hype. We do know that. But there's many movies that I've watched over the years and sat back and I watch some of the things they talk about, some of the scenarios they recreate. And I can look at that and just sit back and go, they did their homework and they did check into some of these things. I mean, is there always going to be Hollywood hype? Yeah. Do I understand why? Yeah. People love to be scared.
In spite of the growing popularity, the consensus is not entirely favorable. There are those who would argue that Hollywood's unrealistic portrayal of paranormal phenomenon has cast an unflattering shadow of unbelievability on the entire subject, causing the public to relate paranormal activity more to science fiction than actual fact.
Reality is you go into a supposed haunted location, you set up your equipment, and you sit somewhere for hours in the dark, and usually nothing really happens while you're there.
We love that feeling of sitting on the edge of your seat and waiting for that big confrontation scene at the end of the movie. Well, if they made a movie based on true reality, people would be asking for their money back, because 2 hours of footsteps, knocks, moving of keys, and nothing else would bore people to tears.
I think most Hollywood movies that deal with paranormal start off with a grain of truth or a good idea, but then they have to Hollywoodize it and make it sensational. Most ghost hunts and research isn't sensational at all. It's a lot of boring, time-consuming work. But in order to have a Hollywood movie, you have to make things appear that aren't necessarily there.
Sensationalism within the film and television industry can create great uncertainty among the viewing audience. Much of the fear surrounding paranormal activity stems from Hollywood's exaggerated perspective of factual events.
Aren't they going to kill any of us?
Don't ask it when. I don't want to know.
I think it really creates a lot of fear. I mean, I admit I was very scared of ghosts for many, many years, until once I experienced it and I started reading on it, and I realized there really wasn't a lot to fear. If you learned more about it, you'd be a lot safer. And I think that the movie industry wants people to be scared of these things, instead of looking for help and wanting to be able to coexist peacefully. Like they said, to sell a movie, they have to bring the fear up. But I think it just makes our job harder to discourage the fear.
Regardless of the Hollywood and media viewpoints, paranormal activity is a very common and respected subject throughout our history. Although not widely popularized, there are many prominent historical figures who, by their own admission, not only experienced paranormal activity, but actually sought out encounters with the spirit world. But where did it all begin? How long has the world been experiencing this unusual phenomenon? And what sources are there to shed light on the history and creation of these perplexing claims? It's possible a significant piece of the puzzle might just be found here. Unearthed during an archaeological expedition in the summer of 1839, these historic tablets portray a tale that is not only the earliest paranormal reference on record, but also the oldest story ever written. A story known as the Epic of Gilgamesh.
The Epic of Gilgamesh is a very significant story in terms of paranormal history, not only because it gives us clues as to the human condition of the day, but it also shows us that thoughts of existence from beyond the grave were not uncommon. They were a significant part of people's everyday lives, and they were taken very seriously.
The tablets tell the tale of the warrior king Gilgamesh and his unyielding quest for not only supreme control over his kingdom, but also for the secret of immortality.
During the course of his reign over the city of Erech, Gilgamesh befriended Enkidu, a man who, for all intents and purposes, was Gilgamesh's physical equal in terms of strength and fighting ability. This made a huge impression on Gilgamesh, and rather than try to destroy him, he thought it wiser to befriend him and join forces.
The partnership was successful, and the warrior team became quite famous for their unstoppable success in battle. It was after one such battle, however, that Gilgamesh's true quest would be realized.
Now, directly following a horrific battle, Enkidu falls ill and eventually dies, and this had a devastating effect on Gilgamesh, not only because he lost his dearest friend, but because it brought him face to face with the fact that he wasn't indestructible. This terrified him, and he fell into an all-encompassing quest to find out if there was a new world after death to conquer.
That quest was soon fulfilled. After many weeks of searching for answers among the seers and prophets of the time, Gilgamesh had an encounter that would rest his mind at ease.
Now, I don't know if the gods took pity on him or not, but Enkidu appeared to Gilgamesh and told him all about the secrets of the underworld, what to expect after dying, everything that Gilgamesh wanted to know. Now, of course, even if this tale were based on factual events, which could have been, the encounter that Gilgamesh had with Enkidu likely would have been strictly psychological. Meaning, here you have a man in Gilgamesh who is distraught, emotionally overwrought, desperate to find the answers to his questions. So it would have been more than likely that he would have made up the whole encounter with Enkidu. He would have probably imagined their whole conversation. But regardless, the story shows us that encounters like this, or at the very least, tales of encounters like this, were documented to have happened over 5,000 years ago.
Although the Epic of Gilgamesh provides some clues, the nature and progression of when true ghost stories originated is still unknown. What is known is that the interest and popularity has clearly manifested within individuals for centuries. And to this day, word of mouth continues to be the proven catalyst in which these stories are passed down and urbanized. Stories, legends, and accounts of unexplained phenomena continue in modern day and will as long as the quest for an understanding of mortality is craved by the human mind. However, there is one historic account which has left an impact so powerful as to have lasted more than 3,000 years and shaped the popular conception of ghosts all the way into the mid-20th century. The story of Stoic Greek philosopher Athenodorus.
Athenodorus Canonides was a really interesting guy. Not only was he a widely revered philosopher and student of Poseidonus of Rhodes, who was probably the greatest polymath of the day, but he was also the teacher of Octavian, who later would go on to be known as Caesar Augustus.
But in addition to his teachings, Athenodorus was also known for something more: his encounter with a ghost. A tale that was later documented by the Roman lawyer Pliny the Younger in a letter to his patron Lucius Sura.
As the story goes, there was an old house for rent in Athens that was infamous not only for causing disease and sickness, but also for being haunted. So haunted, in fact, that skeptics that went to the house to observe it, to try to disprove the rumors, often came away petrified of what they saw.
It wasn't long before Athenodorus would discover the spirit everyone was talking about. On his first night in the house, while writing, the faint sounds of rattling chains and the startling apparition of an old man caught the philosopher's attention. After trying to ignore the spirit with no avail, he decided to follow him with the hope of putting an end to the disturbances once and for all.
Athenodorus follows it out to the garden, where it points to the ground and then disappears. So the next day, Athenodorus gets permission from the town magistrate to dig at the spot where the apparition pointed. He digs it up, and he finds a skeleton wrapped in chains.
The belief in afterlife existence has not only been one of the primary influential factors in the cultural shaping of our history as humans, it's also the fundamental basis of every one of the 19 major world religions. However, in spite of the obvious influence the paranormal has had on religion, a 2005 Harris poll revealed that while 82% of U.S. adults believe in